May I inquire?
You may.
Mr. Calhoun, will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Bradley Wayne Calhoun.
Will you tell the jury how you're currently employed?
I'm a shift lead with Walgreens.
Before working at Walgreens, did you work at the Dollar General?
Yes, ma'am.
In what capacity?
I was the assistant store manager.
And what Dollar General were you working at as the assistant manager?
The one at Edgewood.
I'm sorry?
Edgewood.
Were you working there on June 21st of 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
And will you describe for the jury what your job entailed at the Dollar General?
Basic store functions, counting down money, customer service, stocking.
Did you also sometimes work behind the counter as a cashier?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you familiar with the case of the state of Florida versus Donald Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me direct your attention to June 21st of 2013. On that day, were you working at the Dollar General?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you have contact with a woman that day who later became known to you as Rain Periwinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you describe for the jury your contact with Miss Periwinkle?
She was a frequent customer, so we were on friendly basis, but that's it.
Did you recognize her as a customer?
Yes, ma'am.
And on June 21st, did she come to the Dollar General on Edgewood Avenue?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember approximately what time?
No, sorry.
Do you remember if anybody was with her?
Her children.
How many?
3, I believe.
Were those little girls, little boys?
Little girls.
I'm sorry?
Little girls.
And had you seen them with their mother before at the Dollar General as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you also on that day have contact with a man who later became known to you as Donald Smith?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you see Donald Smith in court today?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you please point him out and describe an article of clothing he is wearing?
Light blue shirt.
And he is seated where?
To the left of me, to the left of you.
Thank you. Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witness has properly identified the defendant, Donald Smith.
The record will so reflect. He's pointed in his direction.
Mr. Calhoun, will you describe your interaction with the defendant that day?
He came in, walked around the store. He came up to the front after a few minutes, asked me if we had any adult magazines. That was about it until Miss Periwinkle came up to the front. She was checking out. There was some articles she left behind because she couldn't afford them at the time. And then he came up and inquired about that.
Okay, so let me walk back a little bit. First of all, does the Dollar General did it sell adult magazines?
No, ma'am.
And did you tell him that?
Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned that Rain Periwinkle brought some articles of clothing up to the cashier's desk but left them behind because she couldn't afford them.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell us about your interaction with her.
We were doing some price checks. There was clearance markdown items, and we were checking prices.
And what were the articles of clothing?
I believe it was some summer wear, little dresses, stuff like that.
Okay. After you did the price check for Miss Periwinkle, what did she do with the clothes?
She left them at the counter.
And then what was your next interaction with the defendant?
He came up, asked if she wasn't able to afford them, and then he asked if it would be too forward or to ask if he could help with pay for them.
Did you find that question to you strange?
A little.
And how did you respond?
I just told him that that's not really my job. I don't want to tell anybody what is right, what's wrong.
What, if anything, did you notice next about the two of them? And by the two of them, I mean specifically the defendant and Miss Periwinkle.
After a few minutes, they were standing outside the store talking.
And do you recall for how long they were outside of the store?
Maybe 15, 20 minutes.
And where were the little girls while Miss Periwinkle was talking to the defendant?
They were outside around the front of the store. It had actually started to rain a little bit, and so they had actually started trying to bring in some of the stuff we had outside to help out.
The children did?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you see Ms. Periwinkle and her children leave the property of Dollar General?
Yes, ma'am.
And will you describe that for the jury, please?
They left with Mr. Smith. They got to his van. That was probably about 15 minutes before closing.
And could you see out the window of the Dollar General from where you were located at the cash register?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you subsequently contacted by law enforcement in this case?
The next day.
And tell the jury about that.
Well, I actually had to call them back because they had been given the wrong information from the manager that was on duty that morning. So I had to call back and let them know that they needed to search later on in the evening for the tapes they were looking for.
Okay, explain what you mean.
They had came to the store to
They
search.
meaning who?
The police.
Okay.
But they were searching the wrong time frame on our security cameras. So I called to let them know I could walk them through the right time frame.
So let's talk about Dollar General's video surveillance capabilities. Obviously, the store had cameras.
Yes, ma'am.
And were you familiar with how the system worked?
Yes, ma'am.
And as part of your job as an assistant manager there, did you also take custody of surveillance video when it was relevant to a particular issue in the store?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you do that in this case as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And so when law enforcement contacted Dollar General, you learned that they had been looking at, you said, an incorrect time frame?
Yes, ma'am.
And how were you able to direct them to the appropriate time frame that they needed to review?
From the memory of just, when the interaction happened, I'm able to go right back, punch in, within hours, search through.
And that's what I'd like you to tell the jury about. What prompted your memory about the night before?
Sorry. I walked into work, they told me about it. As soon as I heard about it, it just clicked. I had heard when I got up that morning, I'd already heard on the news about the incident at Walmart. It wasn't until I actually got in that day and my store manager was telling me about the police coming to the work to check the cameras that I put 2 and 2 together.
When you say it clicked or you put 2 and 2 together, do you mean recalling this defendant?
Yes, ma'am.
And specifically Ms. Periwinkle leaving with him?
Yes, ma'am.
So you made contact with law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you begin yourself to review the surveillance footage from the night before?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you take custody of Dollar General's surveillance footage and turn it over to law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
In preparation for your testimony today, have you taken the time to come to the State Attorney's Office and review that original surveillance footage?
Yes, ma'am.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Mr. Calhoun, let me show you what's been pre-marked for identification purposes, State Exhibit F. Do you recognize these discs?
Yes, ma'am.
And are these the discs that you, in fact, reviewed in full at the State Attorney's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
And were these discs the original surveillance video that you collected and gave to law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
This time I would tender into evidence that's been pre-marked as State Exhibit F. If you have number exhibit. No objection, Your Honor.
All right, that'll be entered as State's Exhibit number 6.
Mr. Calhoun, did you also have the opportunity to look at a shortened version of those original surveillance tapes?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked for identification as State Exhibit H. And do you recognize this disc as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And is this, in fact, the shortened version of the original surveillance footage that you provided law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
What looks different about State H from the original surveillance footage that you collected?
From the one that's in your hand?
I'm sorry?
From that one?
How is this, the redacted version, different than the original?
The interaction at the register where she left the items behind, that they don't have that angle on there.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a moment. Did you notice that there are arrows in
Yes, ma'am.
State H?
Yes, ma'am.
And what do those arrows reflect?
Rain Periwinkle and Donald Smith.
And in looking at State H, did you in fact confirm that those arrows accurately reflect the defendant and accurately reflect Rain Periwinkle?
Yes, ma'am.
Now let me take you back. You just mentioned that State's Exhibit H does not capture an interaction that the original surveillance videos do.
Yes, ma'am.
We tell the jury what you mean by that.
They only did the angles where they're present on the screen, not necessarily my interactions with them, so they didn't put that into the actual FBI cut.
And State's H is a shorter version of the original surveillance videos now
Yes,
in
ma'am.
evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
And last question, State's H, is it in fact a true and accurate reflection, just shortened, of the original video surveillance that you collected and gave to law enforcement?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a moment.
Sure.
I have nothing further.
All right. Any cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Calvin.
Good afternoon.
In fact, Ms. Periwinkle and her children were somewhat frequent customers at your store.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you would notice that they normally got to your store by walking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And in fact, you kind of noticed after they had left your store, you noticed this interaction between Ms. Periwinkle and the person you've identified as Donald Smith.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I guess right at that exact same time, someone that you kind of assumed was Ms. Periwinkle's friend also was talking to them,
Yes,
correct?
ma'am.
And you kind of picked up on that because of the way they greeted one another, that it appeared that Ms. Periwinkle was familiar with this other person.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember, did that person, it was a female person?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did that person ever physically come into your store?
That I don't remember. I don't think so.
Okay. And you found it unusual that Ms. Periwinkle brought herself and her 3 minor children into the van that you saw them leaving, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
No further questions.
May Mr. Calhoun be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you. The state may call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. May the state next call Samantha Bray.
Samantha Bray,
May I proceed, Your Honor?
you may.
Good afternoon. Would you please introduce yourself and spell your last name for the record?
Samantha Bray, B-R-A-Y.
And Ms. Bray, where are you currently employed?
Leslie's,
What do you do at Leslie's?
a manager,
And what type of work do you do there?
retail.
Were you previously employed at Walmart?
Yes,
Which specific Walmart?
the Walmart on Lone Turner Road
And when did you begin working for that Walmart?
in 2011.
Were you still working for Walmart on June 21st of 2013?
Yes,
And what was your position?
asset protection associate,
And could you please describe your duties as an asset protection associate?
to protect company assets, detect and detain shoplifters.
And while working for Walmart as an asset protection associate, did you become proficient in the operation of Walmart's surveillance system?
Yes,
And could you please describe that system for the jury?
it's made up of many cameras, still cameras, movable cameras, and a DVR system.
How is surveillance footage recorded and stored?
It's recorded onto the DVR system
And where is that DVR system located within the store?
in the asset protection office.
And is it located on a desktop computer within that office?
Yes,
Is the asset protection office located in a secure area?
yes,
Is access to that office limited?
yes it is.
To whom?
Upper management and asset protection only.
And are the recordings made automatically?
Yes,
And do they contain date and time stamps?
yes,
I'd now like to draw your attention to June 21st of 2013. Were you working at Walmart that day?
yes.
Do you remember what time your shift began?
Approximately 3 p.m.
And was the surveillance or the video surveillance system working properly that day?
Yes,
At some point that evening, did officers of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office arrive on scene?
yes.
Do you remember approximately what time that was?
Between 8 and midnight?
And did those officers make contact with you?
Yes,
And based on that contact, were you asked to assist them with their investigation?
yes.
How so?
Pull back video.
Could you describe the process of pulling back video?
You go to the desktop computer, you go into the DVR system, you pull time and date and approximate location.
And then from there, what do you do?
You save it and burn it to a disk.
Did you employ that process to obtain specific surveillance footage of Walmart on the evening of June 21st of 2013?
Yes.
What date and approximate time frames did you pull?
June 21st, 2013, between the hours of 8 p.m. and midnight.
And how many discs did you use to burn that surveillance?
16.
Were those videos altered or edited in any way?
No.
And what did you do with those discs?
I turned them over to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
And for the record, I am now approaching Mr. Wright, the witness, what is previously been marked for identification as Case Exhibit G. Ms. Bray, would you please take a look at these discs? Ms. Bray, do you recognize these?
Yes.
What do you recognize them to be?
These are the discs we turned over to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
And do those discs contain the original surveillance footage that you pulled on June 21st of 2013?
Yes.
And do those discs fairly and accurately represent and depict Walmart on the evening of June 21st of 2013?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would move into evidence what has previously been marked as State Exhibit G as the next numbered exhibit.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, they'll be entered as State's Exhibit 7 in evidence. Thank you.
And Your Honor, at this time, the state has no further questions.
Okay, thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Just
All
a couple
right.
questions. Good afternoon, Ms. Bray.
Good afternoon.
Ms. Bray, at your particular Walmart, the one that you were working back in 2013, how many cameras were there in the store?
A lot.
And they're all over the ceiling, right?
The ceiling, the doors.
Okay. And when somebody walks into your Walmart, was there a TV up there showing them walking into the Walmart?
Yes.
Okay. So it's obvious to anybody in the store that's doing anything that they're going to be recorded, right?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. You're free to go.
The state calls Christopher Iver to the stand.
Christopher Iber.
May I inquire?
You may.
Mr. Iver, will you please state your name for the record?
My name is Christopher Iver. It's spelled I-B as in boy, E-R.
Thank you. Will you tell the jury how you're employed?
I am currently employed with the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Forensic, Audio, Video, and Image Analysis Unit in Quantico, Virginia.
Is there an acronym for your unit?
FAVU.
How long have you worked for the FBI?
This May, it'll be 15 years.
And how long have you worked in the field of photography?
It's been over 30 years.
Will you explain to the jury what your unit does at the FBI?
As our name would indicate, we do forensic analysis on audio, video, and imagery. I am an image examiner of questioned photographic evidence. My official title is photographic technologist. I do 4 types of exams. I do comparison analysis, and that would be comparing faces, clothing, cars, guns, anything depicted in photographs or in videos. I also do authenticity. Has an image been manipulated or changed, or did an image come from a particular camera? I also do photogrammetry. Photogrammetry is simply the science of taking measurements from photographs. So this would be height determinations or the velocity of a vehicle in a video, how fast it was going. And then I also do enhancements. This would simply be improving the imagery so that you can get more information from the video or the image.
Let me direct your attention to the case of the state of Florida versus Donald Smith. Are you familiar with this matter?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you provided in Quantico, Virginia, surveillance video footage from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, I was.
Do you have your reports with you?
Yes, ma'am, I
And you
do.
may refer to those if you need to. On what date did you receive surveillance footage from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office related to the matter of State of Florida versus Donald Smith?
I received two different groups of videos. One is from a Walmart, and that would have been on June 8th in 2015. And then the other was from a Dollar General store, and that was December 8th, 2015.
And Mr. Ivor, what were you asked to do with those two sets of videos?
I was asked to add indicators of individuals that were depicted in the videos to help assist in seeing their location within the videos.
Did you also reduce the number of hours to a single of the original videos to a single FBI disc?
I did. When I was working on the videos, I noticed that the time frame was a long period of time, and so I requested if it would be okay for me to redact the areas where the people of interest were not displayed in the video, which shortened the video.
Mr. Ivor, how did you identify, you said people of interest, how did you identify the relevant parties in the video surveillance?
It was indicated by Mr. Henson from the attorney's office which people were in the videos. I was given exemplars and photographs of the people that he was interested in.
And how did you indicate the relevant parties in each of these videos?
Originally, the request was for me to do it similar to the way my unit did the Boston Marathon bombing videos for that court trial, but they used circles. And because these individuals within these videos were so close together, circles would have been very confusing, so I chose arrows. So I used color arrows to indicate the people of interest.
And did you have an arrow key that's reflected on each of the redacted and enhanced videos that you created?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And does that key actually indicate the colors you use for each relevant party?
It does.
May I approach?
You may.
Let me show you what's been introduced into evidence as State's Exhibit G, and ask you to take a look at these DVDs. Do you recognize these DVDs?
Yes, I do.
These have been tendered into evidence represented as being the original surveillance video footage from the Dollar General. Did you review this original footage in Quantico at the FBI?
Yes, I did.
Let me show you now what has been pre-marked for identification as State Exhibit H. I'll show you to take a look at this. What do you recognize States H to be?
This would be my results copy of the video that I compiled.
And does this reflect the key that you've testified to with the arrows?
Yes.
And what's been marked as State H, and the next number exhibit.
We review all prior objections and motions.
Okay, that'll be noted for the record, and States H will be entered into evidence as States Exhibit 8 over those objections.
Let me also show you what has been introduced into evidence as States Exhibit 7. Should we take a look at those? So States Exhibit 7 also reflect your markings from the FBI when you reviewed that original surveillance video.
Yes, it does.
Now let me show you what's been pre-marked for identification as States Exhibit I and ask you if you recognize this DVD.
I do. This is the results copy that I returned with the compiled video.
Let me tender what's been pre-marked as States I
thank you. State's Exhibit I will be entered as State's Exhibit 9 over the previously expressed objections.
May I publish states 8 and 9 to the jury?
You may. You may. You may.
Mr. Iber, do you recall how long the redacted Dollar General video is?
No, I do not recall the exact length of it.
Ready? Go ahead. Mr. Iber, what does the blue arrow reflect?
That would be one of the questioned individuals that I was asked to indicate.
And your key at the beginning of this video indicated that the blue arrow was Donald Smith. Is that correct?
That is correct.
You don't know Mr. Smith?
No, I do not.
You obtained that information from law enforcement?
That is correct.
Mr. Iber, let me pause this right here and ask you, will you explain to the jury when you're actually doing an enhancement such as this and using arrows, how the process you undertake to do that?
Sure. It's digital video, so I use a nonlinear editor. It's Adobe Premiere's the software that I used. It's something that you can purchase off the shelf. Within that software, you're able to enhance videos, edit videos as well. So you can add markers, or you can lighten or darken or sharpen. It has different types of filters that you can use with those videos. This particular video, the only thing that I added were arrows.
For the record, I'm hitting play again. Mr. Iber, let me reflect your attention to the orange arrow. And who is reflected by the orange arrow?
That would be Ms. Periwinkle.
Again, you don't know Ms. Periwinkle.
That is correct.
Okay. For the record, I'm hitting play again.
I redacted areas where the people of interest weren't in the video. And then I indicated how much time had actually lapsed or how much was redacted.
Thank you. For the record, I'm hitting play.
There's multiple cameras within the store, and so some of the cameras were capturing the individuals at the same time. So if I wanted to, instead of splitting the screen and putting multiple cameras up at the same time, I would just cut to another camera and explain that there was some overlap.
For the record, I'm hitting play. Let me pause. Mr. Ivor, is this a different camera angle from the one that we were just looking at, camera 2?
Yes, it would be a different camera.
And is that indicated by the CAM numerical in the upper left-hand corner of the video?
Yes, that is correct.
For the record, I'm hitting play. Once again, let me direct your attention to the upper left-hand corner. Is what's reflected here, again, a different camera angle than that inside the store that we were just looking at?
Yes.
This reflects the outside of the store, a parking lot?
Yes.
For the record, I've hit play. Okay, let me pause here. Let me direct your attention to the upper left side of the screen. Is that part of a yellow arrow?
It appears to be, yes.
And who was indicated by the yellow arrow?
Cherish Periwinkle.
For the record, I'm hitting play. Mr. Iber, let me pause this for a moment now. This is the first time we see a white arrow. What does the white arrow indicate?
Actually, this would be the second time. It was also at the beginning of the video.
It was,
indicating,
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Indicating the van of interest.
Mr. Iber, did this conclude your work on the Dollar General video?
Yes.
May we approach?
Sure. 10 or 15 minutes. So take your time, and the bailiff will let me know when you're ready. We'll be in recess. Thank you.
Now, you took a look, Mr. Iber, at multiple different DVDs from Walmart. Were each of those DVDs from a different camera angle in that store?
That is correct.
Mr. Iber, let me ask you, and pause this for a moment. We just saw another substantial lapse of time. How was that the amount of time that you lapsed from the van driving out of the parking lot?
Yes.
Do you want me to rewind it? Did you see the amount of time? Was it 18 minutes?
It was approximately 18 minutes.
Okay. And that, again, was time that you redacted out of the version you put together because it did not have the relevant parties reflected in it.
That is correct.
Okay. Mr. Iber, did that conclude your work in the case of the state of Florida versus Donald Smith?
Yes, it did.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any cross-examination? May this witness be excused? Thank you so much. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The state may call their next witness.
They will call Christopher Rozier.
Christopher Rozier.
May it please the court?
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Christopher Derek Rozier. My last name is spelled R-O-Z-E-R.
Mr. Rozier, I'd like to direct your attention back to June 21st of 2013. Were you living in Jacksonville at that time?
No, I was living in Callahan.
And were you married?
Yes.
Did you have a child?
Yes.
What was the name of your child?
Destiny Rozier.
And the name of your wife?
Ashley Rozier.
At some time in the evening of June 21st of 2013, did you and your wife and your daughter decide to go shopping at the Walmart on Lem Turner Road?
Yes, sir.
And what were you going shopping for?
We were going to get WIC.
And what do you mean by going to get WIC?
It was grocery assistance.
And so that afternoon or that evening you were going to the Walmart to go grocery shopping using your grocery assistance or the WIC?
Yes.
Approximately what time did you arrive at the store?
I don't remember what time I arrived. It was sometime in the evening.
Sometime in the evening after dark?
Yeah.
And how long did you and your wife and your child shop in the Walmart that day?
A couple hours, 2 hours, something like that.
You bought your groceries?
Yeah.
After you had completed your grocery shopping, did you all wait in the parking lot for a family member?
Yes, sir.
Why were you waiting for a family member?
Because we were going to offer my ex-wife's dad some of the milk that we got because they give you so much.
Okay, and you said ex-wife. Since June of 2013, have you and your wife Ashley split?
Yes.
But on that evening, after you completed your grocery shopping, based upon the amount of groceries that you had, you were going to share some with her father?
Yes.
Where did you go to wait for her father outside the Walmart?
Over to the side parking lot by the curb, over up beside the lawn and garden area.
What type of car were you and your wife driving that night?
A gold Toyota Corolla.
Were you driving or were you the passenger?
I was the passenger.
Okay, and so your wife was driving?
Yes.
And your daughter, what's your daughter's name again?
Destiny.
And Destiny, she was in the back seat?
Yes.
How old was she at the time?
I believe she was about 4.
So you just pulled off sort of off the side of the main road to wait for your father-in-law to come to get his portion of the groceries?
Right.
How long do you think you were waiting in the parking lot?
I guess about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, something like that.
And was her father working and then trying to meet up with you at the Walmart?
That was the arrangement, yes.
While you were waiting near the garden center in the parking lot, did a white van pull up next to your car?
Yes, sir.
When the white van pulled up next to your car, was it closer to your side, the passenger side, or closer to your wife's side?
Closer to my side.
And so you were parked so that your window was facing the lane of traffic?
My window was, yeah.
When this white van pulled up next to you, did you know the person inside the van?
No.
Did they say anything to you when they pulled up next to you?
I rolled my window down and they said, "We're going to get cheeseburgers."
Who made that statement to you?
The person in the van.
Describe them for me.
They had a white mustache, white hair.
If you saw that person again, do you think you'd be able to identify him?
Yeah.
Do you see that person who was driving the white van in the courtroom here today?
Yes.
Could you please point him out and describe where he's seated and what he's wearing?
He's wearing a blue shirt, got glasses on top of his head.
Seated in between the two
Yes.
people in suits? Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, Donald Smith.
The record will so reflect.
So when the van pulled up next to you, where was the driver's window of the van in comparison to your window?
It was up over my window.
Okay, so
It was a little ahead of me, too.
So a little ahead, and based upon the size of the vehicle, it was a little higher than where you were?
Yeah.
Could you tell if anybody else was inside the van at the time?
I could not.
But you got a good enough look to see his
Yeah,
face?
yeah.
Had you ever met this man before?
No.
Do you know why this man would have said, "We're going for cheeseburgers" to you and your wife and your daughter?
I have no idea.
How long was this interaction with the defendant when he pulled up next to your car?
5, 10 seconds.
When the van pulled off, could you tell where it went?
It pulled off and went to the outside the other entrance.
After the van pulled off, did you and your wife have a conversation as to whether or not that may have been her father in the van with the person who was driving?
Yes.
Did you decide to go see if you could follow them and follow them down to the fast food restaurants that were on that street?
Yes, we went down to see if they were there.
Did you go to the McDonald's down the street?
We never went into the parking lot of the McDonald's.
Did you drive by?
Yeah, we drove by.
Did you see the white van and this defendant who had pulled up next to you?
No.
Did you think that maybe they weren't going to McDonald's and maybe went to Wendy's?
Yeah, we thought maybe, yes.
Did you go to the Wendy's and see whether or not they were in the
Yes,
Wendy's
we did.
area?
Yes, we did.
Did you see the white van or this
Nope.
defendant in the Wendy's parking lot?
No, I did not.
What did you and your wife do after you checked those two locations? Did you go back to Walmart?
We went back to the same spot at Walmart we were waiting.
Still waiting for her father to show
Yes.
up? Did her father ever show up?
No.
So eventually, did you all drive back to Callahan?
Yeah.
The next day, did the police go to your home?
Yes.
Prior to the police arriving at your home, did you know anything had happened at the Walmart that evening?
I did not.
Did you all even have television in your home in Callahan?
We didn't have cable or anything like that.
So until the police came knocking on your door, you had no idea that anything had happened the night before?
No, I didn't know anything.
Did you tell the police when they arrived what you saw and that you saw this defendant that day?
Yes, I did.
Thank you, sir. I don't have any further questions.
Any questions? All right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Rozier.
Good afternoon.
This was at night. You do remember that, correct?
Yes, it was at night.
Okay. And your daughter, Destiny, was in the car in the back seat?
Yes.
Okay. And you had been waiting long enough that the security guard that patrols the Walmart could come over to check on you?
I don't remember.
Okay. But you're pretty familiar with this area?
I was pretty familiar with it, yeah.
Okay. And this was a very unusual experience, correct?
Yes.
And you're sitting there, and this person you've never seen before in your life comes and stops their car right next to yours, right?
Correct.
And evidently beckons enough to where you literally roll the window down so that you can actually talk to this person.
Well, I just saw somebody there. I rolled the window down.
Okay. And so you had the window down so that you could hear, and that person that you've identified as Mr. Smith, he had his window down.
Yes.
Okay, so you guys were able to hear, and you're literally within feet of each other.
Correct.
Okay. And he says to you, we're going for cheeseburgers.
Yes.
And you and your wife got the impression that you were to follow them, correct?
That's kind of the idea it gave us. We thought maybe her father was with him.
Okay. Do you remember him saying, follow us?
I don't remember that, no.
Okay. Do you think maybe you might have told the detectives that it was, we're going for cheeseburgers, follow us?
I could have.
Okay. Regardless, you did end up, I guess, eventually attempt to follow them, correct?
Yeah, we went to go see if they were down there.
Okay. At both the McDonald's, and then you swung back through the Wendy's.
Correct.
Okay. And you didn't hear anything besides this man's voice?
I heard nothing but the man's voice.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Can you read the rest?
So he pulls up and says, we're going for cheeseburgers.
Correct.
Next to you in your gold car.
Yes.
May this witness be excused?
You may.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time. You may call your next witness.
The state would call Ashley Rozier Chappelle. Now it's Ashley Chappelle. May it please the court.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury and spell your last name for the court reporter?
My name is Ashley Chappelle, Chappell.
And Ms. Chappelle, back in June of 2013, were you going by the name of Ashley Rozier?
Yes, sir.
Were you married at that time to Christopher Rozier?
Yes, sir.
Were you and your husband and your daughter at that point in time living in Callahan, Florida?
Yes, sir.
I would like to direct your attention to the evening of June 21st of 2013. At some point, did you and your husband and your ex-husband now and your daughter go to the Walmart on Lem Turner Road here in Jacksonville, Florida?
Yes, sir.
Why were you going to Walmart that night?
It was Wickham food stamp night, so we were getting milk.
And you were getting food assistance, and so on that evening you were going to buy groceries, milk, and things of that nature?
Right. We needed formula for Des.
Approximately how long did you shop at the Walmart on Lem Turner that evening?
It was quite a while. We were wasting some time after Desi watched her shows.
Eventually, did you make your purchases?
At the front of the store, yes, sir.
That evening, did you buy a lot of milk using the assistance?
About 4.5 gallons, I think it was.
Could you and your family use that much milk before it would go bad?
No, we already had some in the freezer.
So did you make some arrangements to meet up with your father that evening so he could take some of the milk that you had purchased?
Yes, sir. I didn't want it to go to waste.
So after you made your purchases, did you and your husband and your daughter wait in the parking lot for your father to arrive?
We had made arrangements to meet right there next to the garden center. Yes, sir.
Was your father working that evening?
He was.
Were you driving that night?
Yes, sir.
What type of car were you driving?
It was a gold Toyota Corolla.
And when you pulled up next to the garden center to wait for your father, where did you position your car in the parking lot?
Okay, you would have the store, and then you would have where you would have the main access road was here. So instead of pulling into a regular parking space, we actually pulled alongside of the curb right next to the other entrance so we could see the oncoming traffic.
Okay. Was your side closest to the curb?
Yes.
The driver's side of the car. Was your daughter in the back seat?
Yes, she loves to listen to the radio.
And then your ex-husband, Chris, was he in the passenger seat?
Right.
Was he seated closest to the lane of traffic if somebody would have pulled up beside your vehicle?
Yes.
At some point in time while you were waiting for your father, did a white van pull up next to your car?
With stripes on the side, yes, sir.
And did the driver of that white van make any statements or comments to you?
Yes, he did.
What did he say?
We're going for cheeseburgers.
Could you hear that from where you were seated in the car?
Very clearly. It was very deliberate and pronounced, and I was like, why? I was very confused.
Did you see the person?
Yes, sir.
Describe him for me.
Wearing a black or dark colored t-shirt, had some kind of something on the front, I couldn't tell. He had his left arm out of the window and one hand up on the steering wheel. As far as facial, it was white hair, kind of maybe like a sandy white color, had a mustache, and looked to me like he had like almost like a 5 o'clock shadow. White gentleman.
If you saw that person again, do you think you'd be able to recognize him?
Yes, sir.
Do you see that person seated here in this courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Could you point him out and describe where he's sitting and what he's wearing?
Light blue, light colored shirt with the tie, right here.
Your Honor, may the record reflect that the witnesses identified the defendant, Donald Smith.
The record will so reflect.
Did you find it odd that the defendant had made this comment to you?
Yes. I didn't know who he was or why he was there. My first recollection was, is my father in this van? Why is he trying to talk to us now?
Could you tell if there was anybody else in the van with the defendant?
There appeared to be someone in the front seat. I don't know who or what, but yes, there was something in the front seat. I could tell shadow for sure.
How long was this interaction when he says this comment about going for cheeseburgers before the van actually pulls off?
It was a very quick exchange, almost like we had been friends forever, and I was very confused. Maybe it was less than a minute.
Did you see which direction the van drove off in?
Very clearly, yes. Where we were sitting, he actually pulled around the corner and went towards, I guess, where the semis would exit and where the stoplight was, not where the stop light, but the stop sign, and turned towards the right.
After the van drove off, did you wonder whether or not your father was actually in the van?
Yes, because usually if I have baby with us, we would always go sit down and have something to eat, or at least grab a French fry or something. So going to have cheeseburgers or going to even get a Frosty was a very normal occurrence for us.
Did you and your husband and your daughter decide to then follow after and see if you could catch up to the van?
Yes, we did.
Did you drive down towards where the McDonald's was on Lynn Turner?
And we circled the parking lot to make sure the van wasn't there.
Did you ever see the van?
Not once it left and turned right, no.
Did you ever see this defendant again?
Not till today.
Did you go to another restaurant in case they didn't mean McDonald's, they meant someplace else?
Yes, actually, we went back around the McDonald's because there's an entrance here. We went around the McDonald's, came back up after the light turned green, went through next to the bank in the Home Depot, and went to the Wendy's, and we circled the Wendy's parking lot before returning to Walmart.
When you circled the Wendy's parking lot, did you see the white van again?
No, we didn't.
Did you see the defendant again?
No.
You went back to the Walmart parking lot to wait for your father?
We decided it would be best just in case we missed him in the exchange somehow.
How long did you wait at the Walmart parking lot that evening?
Total or after the exchange?
After the exchange.
2 songs on the radio.
2 songs later?
Two songs on the radio as we were thinking, well, we've had the milk in the car. We didn't want it to sour and go bad where nobody could use it, so we decided to take it home and freeze it.
So you never met up with your father that night?
No, he was otherwise occupied with his job.
The next day, did police officers go to your home in Callahan?
Yes, and scared us.
Prior to the police showing up, were you aware that anything had taken place at Walmart the night before?
No, not at all.
Was that the first that you had heard of anything taking place at Walmart?
Very muchly so.
And did you identify the defendant to the police when they asked you to identify him?
They actually showed us a couple of sheets of paper with his photo on it. So yes, afterwards.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions.
Any cross? Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
You ended up having to wait there for trying to connect with your dad for quite a while, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Long enough for the security guard that travels around the parking lot to come around and check on you 3 or 4 times?
At least twice that I remember.
Okay. And it was an odd occurrence, correct?
Very.
I mean, this person drives up close enough to where his passenger or his driver's side window is right next to your passenger window, correct?
No, that was my husband's passenger window, but my car, yes.
Right. I apologize. You were driving. But close enough to where each of you were able to get a good enough look at him to identify him.
Yes.
Okay. And the statement was, we're going to get cheeseburgers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And do you remember anything else that was said?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Could it also have included the statement, follow us?
It's possible.
Okay.
It's been a while. I don't remember exactly what was said.
Regardless of exactly what was said, you all did attempt to follow them.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and you went to a McDonald's location that I guess you were familiar with the area?
Yes, ma'am. It's right up the road.
Okay, and then you also even circled back to Wendy's?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Anything further?
Yes, Your Honor. Ma'am, obviously it was unusual that a total stranger pulled up next to your car, correct?
Right. I was wondering, where's Dad? Is Dad in this car? Why did this person try to contact us? Why?
And aside from it being unusual that the stranger pulled up, was there anything peculiar about how he talked?
He talked like he had known us for years, like it was just a very friendly, hey, how you doing? We're going for cheeseburgers kind of an attitude.
But normal.
Of
right?
course.
Didn't seem like he was in distress.
No, not at all.
Did he appear intoxicated to you?
No, not at all.
Just seemed normal.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions.
Anything further? May this witness be excused? All right, thank you. We appreciate your time today. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, can we have a 5-minute recess just to allow our next witness to
Well, it takes a little longer than 5 minutes for us to have a recess. So we'll be in recess for about 10 minutes, but then y'all let us know when you're ready, okay?
Let me direct your attention to the specific date of June 22nd, 2013. Do you remember that morning?
Yes, I do.
And was your daughter working that morning at UF Health?
Yes.
Did you go to pick her up from work?
Yes, I did.
What shift had she worked?
She had worked from the 12-hour shift from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m.
And were you on time that morning?
Yes.
Will you explain to the jury the route you took that morning to pick her up?
I left my house on Ruggers Road, 10729, passed all the way down Rutgers to Broward Road, and then 95 south, and got off on 8th Street to UF Health.
Did you travel on your way home the same way?
Yes.
After picking Christina up at work that morning, did you travel back down Rutgers Road with your daughter in the car?
Yes, I did.
Did you notice something unusual?
Yes.
Approximately what time did you notice something unusual?
Around between 7:15, 7:20.
And will you tell the jury what you noticed?
I noticed a white van with blue stripes parked behind the church, a little in the area behind the shed up there, with the back doors open.
Okay. Let me orient the van. Which direction was the van facing?
The front of the van was facing Rutgers Road.
Okay, let me direct your attention, Ms. Howard, to your screen. You can use your fingers on this screen. For the record, I'm showing what's been pre-marked as State Z and later will be tendered into evidence. Will you circle the church in this photograph that you've mentioned? Do you know the name of that church?
Highlands Baptist Church.
And will you indicate, using this photograph, Rutgers Road? Will you use an arrow to show the jury which way you were traveling when you saw the van? And now, using the touch screen, will you show the jury, using this photograph, where the van was backed up along the tree line? Now, you mentioned that the back doors of the van were open.
Correct.
Was the back of the van up against the tree line?
Against what? Yes, where the water is.
The front of the van
was facing Rutgers Road.
Thank you. Let me now show you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit K and will later be tendered into evidence. This photograph of a white van with a blue stripe around it, is this photograph of a van consistent with that which you saw on the tree line?
Yes, it is.
So, did you and your daughter have any discussion about this van you saw along the tree line?
Yes.
And what was that?
We thought something fishy was going on.
Did you do anything about it?
We didn't see anyone. We just kept going home, headed to the house.
And what time did you arrive home that morning?
We arrived home about maybe 7:20, around 7:20ish or 7:25.
And did you talk to somebody after you arrived home?
Yes, when I got home, my mom called and she told us that there was a alert about a missing child in our area at the Walmart, and they were looking for a white van, and we immediately said we just saw a van parked behind the church down the street.
Was that the first you had learned about that alert?
Yes.
And what did you next do?
We got in my truck and we drove back down the road. It was gone at that time.
What time would you say you got back to the tree line?
I want to say we could have been home maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and it's only like maybe 30 seconds down the road, if that long.
And when you got back to this place where you had seen the van was no longer there?
Correct.
And what did you next do?
I told Christina we need to call 911.
And did Christina call 911?
Yes, she did.
And were you next to her when she made that phone call?
Yes, I was.
No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Ms. Howard, as you drove by, you noticed the van down by the river?
Correct.
And when you had driven by previously on the way to get your daughter, did you notice the van?
No, I did not.
Did you, as you're going down the road in a different direction, do you remember looking that way?
No, I don't.
Okay. Okay.
but I don't remember seeing it.
But as
I don't
you're
recall.
coming up the way, when you're returning, you go past the church, and then the whole section of woods sort of opens up, so you have more opportunity, and you're sort of looking in that direction, right?
Correct.
Okay. And did you see anybody down by the bay?
No, I did not.
Did you look at it long enough to know whether or not the windows were rolled down on the front seats?
No, I don't recall.
Okay, you just noticed that the back doors were open?
Correct.
Okay. And how about through the woods past the van? Did you see anybody down there?
No, I couldn't.
That's all I have.
Anything further? May Ms. Howard be excused? Thank you for your time today, Ms. Howard. You may call your next witness.
The state calls Christina Howard to the stand.
Christina Howard.
Thank you. Ms. Howard, will you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the record?
Yes, ma'am. My name is Christina Howard, CHRISTINAHOWARD.
Is Marquita Howard your mother?
Yes, ma'am.
How are you employed?
I'm a cash potion specialist at Southeast Orthopedics.
In June of 2013, will you tell the jury where you were working then?
Shands, UF Health.
And how were you employed there?
A sitter.
And did your mother at that time take you and pick you up from your shifts at Shands?
Yes, ma'am.
Were you living with your mother at the time?
Yes.
Let me direct your attention to the morning of June 22nd, 2013. Do you remember that morning?
I do.
What shift had you worked at UF Health the night before?
A 12-hour shift, 7P to 7A.
So you started at 7 p.m. on June 21st?
Yes, ma'am.
And your shift ended at 7 a.m. on June 22nd?
Yes, ma'am.
Was your mom on time that morning to pick you up from your shift?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you travel home with your mother that day?
Down Broward Road.
And then what road did you take from Broward Road to get to your home?
Rutgers.
Are you familiar with the Highlands Baptist Church on
Yes.
Rutgers Road?
Yes, ma'am.
That morning on Rutgers Road near the Highlands Baptist Church, did you notice anything unusual?
Yes, we were talking about it. We noticed a van backed up behind Highlands Church with his doors open facing out, and we was just like, okay, someone must be doing funny business on the church property. And later on, we got home to my mother's address. My sister came out on the phone with my grandmother, and that's when she was like, "There's a little girl missing in your area from Lem Turner," which was Cherish. We hopped back, well, she described the van. We hopped back in the car, we was like, oh my God, we just seen that van. And by the time we got there, the van was gone.
Okay, so let me back you up a little bit. On your way home from your work, on your way home with your mom, when you saw this van, approximately what time was it?
Oh goodness, it had to be around 7:15.
And what time did you arrive home after seeing that van?
We live like literally 2 minutes away, so 7:20.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said that the back doors of the van were open?
Yes, ma'am.
And the back of the van was facing what direction in relation to Rutgers Road?
The back of it was facing the woods.
Okay. So, Ms. Howard, let me direct your attention to what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit Z and will later be introduced into evidence. Is this photograph an aerial photograph of the area which you've described to the jury?
Yes, ma'am.
Using your finger, will you circle Highlands Baptist Church? And using your finger, will you describe for the jury where you saw the van along that tree line?
Would you like me to circle?
That would be fine. Thank you.
Right in this area back there.
And were you traveling, Ms. Howard, this direction on Rutgers Road on your way home?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you describe the van?
Yes, white van with stripes on the side.
Let me direct your attention to what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit K. Does this look like the van that you saw that morning?
Yes.
After you returned home and you learned that there was a missing little girl, what did you next do?
We hopped back in the car and drove back down to Highlands Church.
What plans did you have?
Hopefully to see the van.
And when you arrived, what did you find?
The van was not there. We rolled down the windows. We screamed for Cherish. We drove around, screamed for her name more, hoping that, we can hear a little girl, anything.
Do you know what time that was in the morning when you returned back? How much time had elapsed between getting home and
We
returning?
got back to the house around 7:20. We drove back off 7:22. I mean, we stayed out there looking for about a good 30 minutes, to be honest.
When you returned to the area where the church was and noticed the van wasn't there, what did you next do?
Called 911.
May I approach?
You may.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked for identification as State Exhibit J and ask you if you recognize this.
Yes, ma'am. That's my initial.
Okay. And prior to your testimony before the jury today, Ms. Howard, did you listen to this call?
Yes.
Did you do that in my office?
Yes.
And is this a true and accurate reflection of the 911 call you made on the morning of June 22nd, 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
This time I extend your States J as the next number of State Exhibit.
All right, that'll be entered as State's Exhibit 10 in evidence.
May I publish to the jury?
You may.
On fine. Hi, we're calling about a suspicious van over here on Rutgers Road, a white van. It was parked behind some bushes really deep, and then we heard that it was a 8-year-old girl. Rutgers and where? Rutgers and behind Highlands Church. Behind Highlands Church.
Can you give me the nearest cross street of Rutgers?
Broward.
Broward?
Yes, ma'am, and it was a white van. It's not there anymore, but we don't know if he dumped anything because we heard a girl just got abducted from Walmart.
Right.
So we're not sure if that's the van, but a white van was pushed all the way to the back of the bushes this morning.
So it's on Rutgers near Broward, near some bushes?
Yes, right behind the church.
Oh, behind Highlands Church?
Yes, ma'am.
Behind bushes. And how long ago did you see it?
Oh, my goodness. You picked me up from work at 7 o'clock, so that was like 7:20. Yeah, 7:20. It was like that. We didn't say nothing. We didn't know anything until just now.
All right, and you said it's now gone?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
But you think he may have, just in case, he might have dumped something?
Right. We don't know, but just in case, it looked suspicious because it was all the way to the back.
Okay, and what is your last name?
Howard.
And what's your phone number?
904-428-3617.
What address are you calling from?
10729 Rutgers Road.
All right, I'll go ahead and put this in and have an officer check it out, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ms. Howard, you said that you and your mother drove around with the windows down calling out for Cherish's name. Where had you learned the name Cherish?
When my grandmother, I'm sorry.
Take your time.
And my grandmother called and told us.
About the alert, that's where you got the name Cherish? I have no other questions.
Any cross-examination? May this witness be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We appreciate your time this afternoon. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state would call Brenda Fillingim, please.
Brenda Fillingim.
May it please the court. Good afternoon, ma'am. Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury and spell your name for the court reporter?
I'm Brenda Fillingim, B-R-E-N-D-I-E, F-I-L-L-I-N-G-I-M.
Ms. Fillingham, do you live here in Jacksonville, Florida?
Yes, I do.
Where do you live?
In Highlands.
And is that the place you were living back in June of 2013?
Yes,
How long have you lived in that neighborhood?
40 years.
I'd like to direct your attention to the early morning hours of June 22nd of 2013. On that morning, were you up and about in the neighborhood?
I was out. I had seen a yard sale, and I missed the sign, so I went down Rutgers to go around the block to go to it, and I seen a van.
So, and let me back you up for a second. So you were out yard sailing that morning?
Yes, I was.
And during the course of your travels, did you see anything unusual parked behind Highlands Baptist Church?
Yes, there was a van backed into the woods, the hedges, bushes near the creek.
How was the van positioned towards where you were driving on Rutgers?
Where it was positioned?
Yeah, was the driver's side facing the road or the woods?
No, it was back then, so it was facing Rutgers Road, and I was going toward Brower.
Can you describe the van for me?
It was white and had a big window in it, because I came this way, and the whiteness caught my eye, and I looked back.
And ma'am, if you look at the screen in front of you, I'm now showing you what's been previously marked for identification purposes and will be later admitted as State's Exhibit K. The van depicted in the photograph, it should be on your screen in front of you.
Okay.
Does that look like the van you saw parked behind the church?
I saw the right side more than I did the rest of it, but it does look kind of like it. The windows look like it.
And now showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit Z for identification purposes will be later admitted. If you could, this is an aerial photograph of Rutgers Road and Broward Road. If I am identifying this X right here is where the church is, could you describe or show by marking on your screen where you saw the van parked when you drove by?
It was about there, I think it was, because I came out and there was a little paved driveway next to the road, and it was right in that area there.
And if this is Rutgers Road right here, which direction were you traveling when you saw the van?
Going towards Brower Road, which would be south.
So you were traveling in this direction?
Yeah, that way, yeah.
Can you all see the red mark? Okay.
Now, Ms. Fillingham, about what time were you out yard sailing that morning?
It was about 7:30.
Okay, sometime after you'd seen the van, did you go back to your home?
Yes, I had went around the block and went to the yard sale. Then I came back down Lenoid and turned on Rutgers to go to my house because I'm in between Rutgers and Biscayne.
When you went back to your house, did you see the van again?
No, I didn't go that far down.
Okay, you didn't travel that far down towards where the church
Mm-mm.
was. When you got back to your house, did you learn that a little girl was reported missing out of Walmart?
Yes, when I went in, I cut the TV on, and I don't remember exactly what I was doing in the house, but I heard the news, and they were talking about this white van. I looked, and I said, I just seen that. So I hopped in the car, barefooted and everything, went back down there.
When you heard it on the TV after you got back to your house, was that the first time you had heard that the child had been reported missing?
Yes, it was.
You hurried out, got in your car, you traveled back down there?
Yes.
When you went back down to the location where you had seen the van, was the van still gone?
No, it wasn't. It was gone.
It was gone. Was anybody else down at the church property when you got down?
Yes, there was another lady and her daughter. And I asked her, I said, "You see that van?" She said, "Yes." And she said she put a call into 911. I said, "I'm going to the substation up on Dunn Avenue. I'm going to go get somebody."
So did you actually drive from Highlands Church to Dunn Avenue and try to get a police officer?
Yes, I did. And I got two of them to follow me back down there.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions.
Is there any cross-examination?
Ma'am, when you initially saw the van down by the edge of the woods, did you see anybody down there?
No, I didn't see nobody. I just thought it was weird for it being there.
Okay, and how about, could you see through the trees if there was anybody behind the van?
No, because it was real full.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fillingham. We really appreciate your time. And take your time and be careful going back down that little slope. Okay. Thank you. The state may call their next witness.
They will call Officer Tina Henson to stand.
Officer Tina Henson.
Good afternoon. Officer, will you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name for the record?
Tina Henson, Henson.
How are you employed?
I've been here for 18 years.
Are you employed with the Jacksonville
Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff's Office?
Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, yes, ma'am.
And you've been employed with the JSO for 18 years?
Yes, ma'am.
And how are you specifically assigned?
Right now, I'm in the Fender Tracking Unit.
Okay. And in June 22nd of 2013, were you working patrol?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember that morning?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what area of town in Jacksonville were you patrolling?
It's the Ocean Way Airport area. It's called Zone 6.
Okay. Had you responded to a traffic accident that
Yes,
morning?
ma'am.
And where was that traffic accident?
It's I-95 southbound on-ramp from Dunn Avenue. Some people call it Bush Drive because it becomes one or the other. But I was actually dispatched to Dunn Avenue, south I-95 on-ramp.
Prior to being dispatched that morning to that car accident, had you received a BOLO, be on the lookout for, related to a missing child?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did you have information looking for a white van?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And while you were responding to the traffic accident, were you actually out of your car?
When I got there, yes, ma'am, I got out of my car, spoke to the citizens that were involved in the crash, and I obtained their information and then got back in my vehicle.
Did you, while you were responding to the scene, actually notice a white van meeting the description of the BOLO pass you on 95?
Yes, I did.
What did you do next?
I rolled down my window and I looked back at the citizens and told them I'd be back. I came up on this radio, which is to talk to headquarters, and advised dispatcher that I was behind a vehicle matching the description as well as the tag on the vehicle.
What happened next?
I turned my lights on just for a brief second just to get in front of the traffic, turned my lights back off, and then proceeded behind the vehicle.
Did you actually pull the white van over?
No, ma'am. Well, I had assistance. I had to wait until we have the air unit respond if they can, the K-9 units respond. So I waited for other assistance, at which K-9 Wilkie was, I believe it was an MLK in 95, which is way in front of me. Once he got into the pursuit, then I don't know who actually activated the lights to stop the vehicle.
Is this called a felony traffic stop?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And so different than a regular traffic stop?
Yes, ma'am.
And when you radioed this in, bringing in K-9 or possibly the air unit, that's for officer protection?
Yes, ma'am, and for felony takedown.
So once K-9 Officer Wilkie got involved in the takedown, where were you in relation to the white van when the white van was actually stopped?
I was on the back passenger side. I was like the third or fourth vehicle to the back right.
And where did the white van, where was the stop effectuated?
I'm not sure what it's called. I know there's railroad tracks on I-95. It's, I want to say Myrtle Avenue, but I'm not 100% sure. I know there's railroad tracks come in, I-10 splits, and 95 South goes this way. We were on I-95 southbound right there.
And what was your role when the van stopped?
Just protection. What happens is when we do traffic felony stops, there's always one in command that does all the transmitting of talking to the person driving the vehicle, telling them orders to get out of the vehicle, and everybody else is there, just basically protects the officer.
And did you see the driver exit the vehicle?
I cannot see the driver exit the vehicle.
Did you see Officer Wilkie approach the driver?
I couldn't see him either.
Could you hear Officer Wilkie?
No, ma'am.
Was there a time that you heard Officer Wilkie actually yell something out?
No, ma'am.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit K and will later be tendered into evidence. Officer Henson, is this a true and accurate reflection of the van that was stopped and the subject of this felony traffic stop on June 22nd?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit L and will later be tendered into evidence. Different angle of the same van.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this a true and accurate reflection of the traffic stop that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, did you have any role in clearing the van
No, ma'am.
or actually taking the driver into custody?
No, ma'am. I do remember seeing the back of his head. That's all I saw when they took him into custody. But other than that, no, ma'am.
Did you return to the traffic accident that morning?
No, ma'am. Florida Highway Patrol came and helped me out.
Okay. Officer, there's a badge number here on this police vehicle, 296 RJ Lasota. Was that another officer who arrived at the scene?
I believe so.
You have one moment.
Cross-examination? Okay.
Good afternoon, officer.
Yes, ma'am.
And I apologize if I missed it. What shift had you worked that day?
It's called day shift. It's 5:15 in the morning to 4:55 in the afternoon.
And when you came on duty that morning, how were you alerted about to be on the lookout?
My sergeant, because the area that I work, there's hotels in that area, he told me to ride through those areas and look in the hotel to see if I see a white van.
And you were aware that the Amber Alert in this case went out at 4:21 a.m.?
No, ma'am, I was asleep.
Okay. So when you got on duty, were you made aware of the Amber Alert?
No, ma'am.
Okay. The only thing you were made aware of was be on the lookout for a white van.
At the time, yes, ma'am.
And you ended up seeing this van about 9 a.m.?
Without looking at the dispatch screen, I'm not sure what time it was.
You just know that you were at a traffic scene and actually saw it and then left that scene so that you could actually follow the van?
Yes, ma'am.
How long did you follow it before enough support personnel allowed you someone to activate the lights?
I don't know the distances. I know it's from I-95 and Dunn to wherever that exit is. I'm not sure.
And approximately how far is that?
Don't know.
I mean, is it 5 miles? Is it 20 miles?
I don't know.
Okay, this is the area you patrol every day?
Not the area that I left, no, ma'am.
Okay.
The zones are divided.
Can you give us an estimate of it's less than 10 miles or more than 10 miles?
I would say less than 10 miles.
Okay. I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Any redirect? Thank you, officer. We appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
You may call your next witness.
Officer Wilkie.
Officer Wilkie.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Officer Wilkie, will you please introduce yourself to the jury and spell your name?
Absolutely. It's Charles West Wilkie Sr. The last name is W-I-L-K-I-E.
How are you currently employed?
Currently, I'm employed at the Jacksonville Aviation Authority as a police officer.
Prior to joining the Jacksonville Aviation Authority, were you at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Yes, ma'am.
For how many years?
Over 25 years.
And for the majority of time that you were with JSO, how were you assigned?
I was a member of the K-9 unit as a K-9 handler for over 18 years.
Who is your K-9 currently?
Gator.
His name is Gator?
Yes.
Is he retired?
Yes, he retired with me.
He still lives with you.
Yes, ma'am.
For how long have you had Gator?
Over 6 years.
Will you explain to the jury how you train a canine for tracking?
For tracking, it's really pretty simple. We take little pieces of hot dog and we step on the ground. The dogs are trained to where the ground smells different to them where you've stepped than where you haven't stepped. So initially, to entice them to stick their noses down there, we look tiny pieces of hot dog down where we step, and then we go out about 5 or 6 feet, and we place their toy hidden by a little bit of grass. So initially, they go a little bit, they're eating hot dog, and they find their toy. They don't realize that they're imprinting the fact that they're smelling a smell that's different than it is where you haven't stepped. Slowly, the hot dog goes away, the links get longer and longer and longer, and then we incorporate that into either the toy would be there, or sometimes there will be a decoy, a person there, that they get rewarded for when they find it. So that's the very basics of having the dog track. He's tracking ground disturbance is what it is.
I want to direct your attention to June 22nd, 2013.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you remember that morning?
Absolutely.
What time did you wake up that morning?
Probably about 4:15.
And what was your shift that day?
5 in the morning till about 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
And when you awoke that morning, did you receive information about an Amber Alert?
Yes, I did.
And what, if anything, did you think when you saw that Amber Alert?
I was walking out to get my police service dog Gator out of the kennel, and I heard the Amber Alert go off, and I heard the descriptions of the missing child and the suspect, and I just thought, well, this is probably what we're going to be working on today, because it was local. It was, within our jurisdiction.
And why did you think that as a canine officer?
That's what we do. Canine is a supplement to patrol, so that's what we do. We go out and we assist patrol, and if there's people that are missing, sometimes there's people missing that are Alzheimer's patients, for instance, and we'll go out and search wood lines and things like that. So anytime there's someone missing, the canines play a vital role in hoping to recover them.
Approximately what time that morning did you end up on the street?
Just after 5 o'clock. We start our shift at 5. We check on at our homes. So I'd heard the alert go out probably between 4:45 and 5 o'clock, and then I loaded Gator up in our police vehicle, and we started our shift.
Did you also receive a bolo that morning?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Related to the same missing child?
Yes, I did.
We explained to the jury what a bolo is.
A bolo is a be on the lookout. It's information that we get from our dispatcher to tell us about something that's going on. It could be something that's in our area or something that potentially could be coming to our area to be on the lookout for.
So shortly after you started your shift that morning, did you learn that another officer had in fact had a visual on a white van meeting the description of the bolo?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And what did you do?
Initially, I was contacted by my dispatcher who advised me to get over to I-95 South, that they were behind the van, that the tag number did match, and they were currently following the van, had not initiated a traffic stop, so no emergency equipment was being displayed at this time. They were waiting for me to be able to assist just in case it ended up in a pursuit, and I would have the dog available for assistance if he was needed.
And where were you when you first received the dispatch information?
I was down off of Main Street in what we call Zone 1, but it's just an area around 20th and Main, and down in that area is where I initially heard the transmission from HQ to get over to 95.
And why is K9 a supplement to a traffic stop such as this?
A lot of times when we have a traffic stop, which this was going to be what we call a felony traffic stop because the person is believed to have committed a felony, then the dogs are utilized in a case where someone flees the vehicle and that type of thing, or refuses to get out of the vehicle. They just give us another tool to utilize to facilitate taking them into custody.
How long did it take you, Officer Wilkie, to get from where you were when you received the dispatch to in line to help assist with the felony traffic stop?
Probably no more than a minute, something like that. I initiated my emergency equipment so I could get over to I-95 and then shut it all back off, so that I could be there and be in position ready if the vehicle continued south on 95, so I'd be in the right position to assist.
And did you participate in the felony traffic stop of the white van?
Yes, I did.
And where was that on 95?
It was on 95 just before I-95 South, right around the Forsyth Street exit in that area on a little bit of an overpass.
Were you the actual police vehicle that effectuated the stop of the van?
Yes, I was directly behind the van. I was the first vehicle. There were no other police vehicles in between the van and myself.
Explain to the jury, you've mentioned a felony traffic stop. what is involved in a felony traffic stop that makes it different than a regular routine traffic stop?
Right. Well, if you've experienced a normal traffic stop, or say, we hate to call them routine because none of them are, but a routine traffic stop would be where the violator of the traffic offense or whatever they're wanted for would remain in the vehicle, and we would go up and we would make contact with you and explain what was going on or that type of thing. On a felony traffic stop, obviously, we feel that there is probable cause to believe the person in the vehicle has committed a felony, and so we ask them to exit the vehicle, and we do a certain series of steps to make it safe for us as much as we can, and then have them walk backwards to us so that we can try to take them into custody safely.
Do you know who Donald Smith is?
Yes, I do.
Will you identify him in the courtroom, please?
Yes, he's seated over to my left in a light blue shirt.
I'm sorry?
He is seated over to my left in a light blue shirt with a striped tie.
Thank you. May the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant, Donald Smith.
The record will so reflect.
Officer Wilkie, after effectuating the stop of the van, was this defendant, in fact, the driver of that van?
Yes, he was.
Will you go ahead and walk the jury through, after the van stopped, what you then instructed the defendant to do?
Initially, when the van was stopped, I asked the defendant to stick his hands out the window so that we could see that both his hands were empty. Unfortunately, there was a lot of background noise. One of the sirens, I think, on one of the other cars was still going, so we got another officer, I believe it was Officer Rob Lasada, got on his PA system so that it was very loud, and instructed him, to put his hands out the window. And so he's seated in the driver's seat, and when we did, we just said, put your hands out the window, and he did, but he did them in a different manner than I'd ever seen before. He put them out and he crossed them as they were out the window. Maybe it's nothing, but it was just something different that I hadn't seen in close to 30 years of law enforcement.
Do you have a recollection of that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And then what did you instruct the defendant to do next?
We asked him to take the keys out of the ignition and toss them out the window so it renders the vehicle immobile. And then we asked him to reach outside and unlock the door or open the door using the outside handle and not the inside handle. Again, so we're trying to see the hands as much as possible.
Let me show you, direct your attention to the screen, show you what has been pre-marked as Exhibit K. Do you recognize this photograph?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Is this in fact a true and accurate photograph of the van that you stopped on June 22nd, 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me show you next what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit L, another angle of the van. Is this in fact a true and accurate photograph of the traffic stop in the van that you stopped on June 22nd?
Yes, it is.
Did you approach the defendant to take him into custody?
Yes. Initially, when Officer Lasada got on the PA, he ordered the defendant to get out of the van, and he did. He complied. He opened it up from the outside as we requested, and then he stood outside the van, and then we have him do a series of things so that we can kind of check and make sure that they don't have a weapon. One of those in which is we asked them to stand facing away from us, and we asked them to lift their shirt, to grab the top of their shirt and pull it up as far as they can so that it'll expose their waistline so that we can see if there's a weapon possibly around the waistline.
Officer Wilkie, let me stop you there.
Yes.
Because I'm going to ask permission to allow you to step off of the witness stand. May the witness. I'd like you to demonstrate for the jury, after asking him to shake his clothing, I'd like you to demonstrate for the jury what this defendant did.
Yes, ma'am. So we ordered him out of the van. He got out of the van, and then we asked him to lift his shirt up like this. So he pulled it up, and then we asked him to turn in a circle. And when we turned back around, we asked him to lower the shirt. And typically, what you get is this. And they just lower their nose, put their hands back up or something like that. But instead, this is what happened. So we just, again, crossed hands and then that. It was a little, I don't know, flamboyant maybe, I don't know, but it was different than any other traffic stop that I've been a part of.
Did you approach him and pat him down to ensure that there were no weapons on him?
Yes, I did.
And did you also clear the van?
Yes, I did.
But you patted him down before clearing the van?
Yes, ma'am.
Tell the jury what you noticed when you patted him down.
Okay. When he came back, Officer Lasada advised him to come back towards me. And then at one point he gets close enough he can hear me without Officer Lasada having to speak on the PA. So I take over, and we ordered him to go down to one knee and then the other knee and cross his ankles and then put his hands up on top of his head like this, interlocking his fingers. I approached and grabbed the top of his hand so that I could tell if he was going to resist or try to pull his hands apart, and I put cuffs on one hand, typically the right wrist area. Then I bring it around and I drop the left arm down, and I complete the handcuffing at that point. And then I raise them up and bring them back to me. Am I allowed to stand up again if I can show you?
May the witness step down from the room.
So I'm going from here, and I've got him cuffed, and I stand him up. And then typically what we do is what we call a cursory search. So I want to just make sure I didn't miss something when he had his jacket up or his shirt up or whatever it was. So we do that while we put one leg kind of in between his two legs, and we go to one side. That way I can reach more around to the front without exposing myself in an awkward position. And so as I started to do the cursory search, just to pat him down before I passed him off to another officer, I felt his pants, and they were soaking wet. It actually put water on my hand.
What did you do?
I shouted out, "Oh my God, she's in the water." I just an involuntary reaction, and when I did, the defendant immediately went from looking straight forward to turning and looking at me and then turning back away. He never said anything, but just the look on his face kind of confirmed what the physical evidence was telling me.
Approximately what time of morning was this?
This was right around between 8:45 and 9 o'clock, somewhere around in there, about the 9 o'clock hour.
So did you next clear the van, and will you tell the jury what clearing the van or clearing a vehicle means?
Yes, ma'am. After the defendant was placed with another officer, I retrieved my police service dog Gator, and we approached myself with several other officers. And what we're doing is to make sure there's not someone else in the van, there's another suspect or anyone else in the van. And as we did that, I went up to the driver's door. I used my police service dog Gator as what I call concealment. In other words, I didn't just put him blindly into the van, because there may be someone innocent in the van too. We don't know that. So I stopped him at the driver's seat, and I just kind of peeked over him and looked in the back to see the interior of the van to see if I could see anyone. And from the front two seats and the middle of the back seat, or excuse me, the middle of the area in the back, to where I could see the front of a bench seat in the back, I could tell that I could not see that there was anyone there, and my police service dog was not indicating that there was anyone there. If there were, he would try to gain entry from smelling the human odor.
Let me show you what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit M. By the way, prior to coming to trial today to testify, did you review all of these photographs in preparation for your testimony?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And is this, Officer Wilkie, in fact, a true and accurate description of what the interior of that van looked like on June 22nd,
Yes, it is.
2013? This is a different angle. Pre-marked as State's Exhibit N. Officer Wilkie, let me direct your attention to here in this photograph.
Yes, ma'am.
Was the middle back seat of that van missing?
Yes.
Did this conclude your involvement in this matter?
No, ma'am. It did at the traffic stop, pretty much. I had another officer who came up from the back side and opened up the back of the van while I stayed in the front and checked back behind this bench seat that you see here on the photo to make sure there was no one behind it. And then that concluded my time of the investigation at the traffic stop location.
Your Honor, let me tender into evidence with the next number of exhibits. Pre-marked as K, L, M, and N.
Any objection? All right, K will be entered as State's Exhibit 11, L as State's Exhibit 12, M as State's Exhibit 13, and N as State's Exhibit 14 in evidence.
Officer Wilkie, what was your next involvement related to this case?
Shortly after we completed the traffic stop and we cleared the van, I was instructed by Sergeant Lonnie Mills of the Homicide Division that some evidence had been developed that they had a possible location of where they believed the victim may be located, and I was asked to drive up to an area off of Rutgers and Broward Road. There was a church there where they had been told that the van had been seen, and I was instructed to go to that area immediately, and that's exactly what I did.
May I approach?
May.
Officer Wilkie, let me show you alphabetical order from States Exhibit O through States Exhibit W. Did you have an opportunity to review these photographs prior to your testimony today?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
And are these, in fact, true and accurate depictions of the scene off of Rutgers Road that you arrived at after the traffic stop?
Yes, ma'am.
I would attend your States O through W as the next number of States Exhibit.
Any? No objection? O will be entered as 15, P as 16, Q as 17, R is 18, S is 19, T is 20, U is 21. You said through W, right?
Correct.
V is 22 and W is 23, all in evidence for the state.
Don't worry about it then. When you arrived to the area at Rutgers Road, what did you immediately notice? Were there detectives there, investigators there?
Yes, ma'am. I saw State Attorney Mr. Khalil there. I saw Lieutenant Schoonover from the homicide unit, several other homicide detectives, and they were all walking about through the wooded area. There's a little wooded area behind the church doing a search of the area.
When you got there, what was your first question?
I asked him where the water is.
Okay. At this time, did you actually use Gator?
Yes, ma'am.
The way that you talked about having trained him, did you ask him to go to work?
Yes, ma'am.
Will you explain to the jury the instruction you gave your dog?
I give him we have a German, we use our commands in German, and I gave him a German command called Suk, which simply means track. And so we initiated out on the edge of the wood line in hopes that he would find the track that led us into the I knew I needed to get to the creek, and so that I knew that if he could find that track, he could take me right to where hopefully the victim was going to be.
Officer Wilkie, let me show you what's been entered into evidence as State's Exhibit 15. I'll ask you to look at your monitor. This is an aerial view of the scene, and will you just tell the jury what body of water is reflected in this photograph?
This is a small tidal creek that leads out to the river, so it does fluctuate with the tide, and this is the body of water that was directly adjacent to the wood line that I was asked to search initially.
And when you arrived, was this creek, were you able to see it when you arrived?
Yes, ma'am. It was pretty much full tide. All that you're seeing up here on the right-hand side up in here, that was completely underwater.
But I mean, when you arrived and you said, where is the water?
Oh, no, ma'am. I could not see the creek from where I was at.
Okay.
I misunderstood. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Can you, I don't know that this photograph will be the best, but can you show the jury where you and Gator arrived using this photograph?
Well, we were way over further out this way. I'm trying to make a little error on there, but we were further out to the right of the screen, and then we initially started our search further back up in this area along the wood line.
Let me show you what's been introduced into evidence at State's Exhibit 16. Is this, in fact, a photograph of the wood line that you've described?
Yes, ma'am.
So will you describe for the jury, after you instructed Gator to work, to track what he did?
Initially, when I got him out, we were down, as you can see, where the orange tracks are at. That's where there was tire tracks there that we believed came from the van. And you can see it's pretty close proximity, if you look back to the right hand of the screen, to where the wood line is. So initially, when I told him the command to souk or to track, he actually went a little bit to the left and he started tracking right down the tire tracks, because they put out there's a lot of scent there, because it was a van or a car that was driven there. That kind of weight, in other words, is what I'm talking about. So I brought him off of that and concentrated right up next to the wood line and gave him the command again and made sure he stayed tucked in close to the wood line, and he didn't go very far at all, and he picked up the track and he took off into the woods.
Now, in this photograph in 16, you can see that there's orange paint. Was that there when you arrived there?
No, ma'am.
And let me take you back to States 15. Similarly, in States 15, there's orange paint reflecting tire tracks. Was that there when you arrived?
No, ma'am.
Now, you've mentioned that Gator actually, once he got off the tire tracks, he worked another track. Let me show you State 17. Will you describe for the jury what's reflected in State 17?
This is the path that Gator took down into the water line. He immediately took off. I went adjacent to him, so in case, and the reason I did that is in case he did walk up, he typically is going to track true, which means he stays right on top of the track. That's just the way that he usually tracks. And in doing so, I didn't want to walk directly behind him. I didn't want to mess up something if there was a footprint or if there was some piece of evidence. I didn't want to step on something that maybe I didn't see because I'm watching him. So I went adjacent to him and just paralleled him, and I would stop him periodically, then I'd catch up to him till we got to the water line.
Let me show you State 18, and will you explain to the jury what is reflected here?
Yes, ma'am. These are the reeds, and there was some water there at the time, but as you can see, they're pushed over. And it's one thing that I noticed once we got down to the water line that I could see a very distinct pattern or path that had been taken.
Your Honor, may I have just a moment? Okay. Thank you. When you got to the shoreline of the creek, will you describe the shoreline to the jury?
Yes, when I got to the shoreline, there was a lot of what I guess would call bric-a-brac. There's pieces of chunks of asphalt and concrete like somebody had dumped them there sometime in the past. So I noticed that was on the edge of the shoreline.
Let me show you what's been entered into evidence in State's Exhibit 19. Is this, as reflected in State's Exhibit 19, some of the asphalt that you saw along the shoreline?
Yes, ma'am.
State's 20, same question.
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Wilkie, when you got to the shoreline, how was your dog acting?
He started to circle a little bit. He was trying, it was like he'd gotten to the end of the track, and that's what they'll typically do. They'll try to figure out where can I pick this up again, but obviously for him, the ground disturbance stopped at the water, so he was kind of circling a little bit at that point.
What did that signal to you?
It indicated to me that we were close, that we weren't going to go up and down on the land side of it anymore. It indicated to me that she was in the water, which is what I felt like, where we were going to find her.
And tell the jury what you next saw.
Next, I put Gator in the down, so I had him stay on the shoreline, and I could see out beside me, I could see a tree that was laying on its side. And then looking at the reeds that were kind of pushed down that were a little bit ahead of me, it almost looked like a triangulation. There was reeds pushed down in a path that Gator had come down, and then I'm looking from my vantage point, and I'm looking out, and everything's lining up with this tree that's directly ahead of me in the water, but it's in the water.
And did you ultimately see Cherish Periwinkle in the water?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I walked over. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I walked over at that point and walked over to the water, and from what I could see up underneath the trunk of the tree was Cherish laying on her left side, and she was facing away from me, and her hair was kind of floating in the water. She was under several inches of water.
You mentioned that she was under several inches of water. At this time, was it high tide in that creek?
I believe it to be a high tide. It was up very well.
Okay. Let me show you what is marked as State's Exhibit 21. Officer Wilkie, let me direct your attention right here. Is this the tree that you've described being downed over the water?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And the orange spot under the tree, is that in fact the body of Cherish Periwinkle?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Now this photograph, Officer Wilkie, there's not water in this photograph.
Correct.
How does this photograph look different than when you first came upon Cherish's body?
When I first arrived and located Cherish's body, the water was probably up to almost halfway up of this tree trunk. There was a little bit of the tree sticking out. That's why I happened to notice, what it was. But I could not see anything below it until I walked over completely up to it. The water's it's brackish, so it has a dark color to it, and so I couldn't see through it clearly like you could if you were at a lake or something like that had clear water.
Now, as a law enforcement officer your entire life, your first reaction when somebody is hurt is to do what?
Your first reaction is to try to save them. You're hoping that there's something you're going to be able to do that's going to save their life.
Was it apparent to you that Sheriff Periwinkle was dead?
Yes, ma'am, it was.
That being the case, what did you next do?
The only thing I could do at that point, my mind's racing about what I can or can't do in a matter of seconds, and all I could do is just stand by with her and protect her, preserve the evidence so that one day whoever did this to her would be held accountable, and protect the scene, as it were. Because we were in a creek, there was a chance of something coming up, an alligator or whatever, and that kind of thing. So I stood by in the water till I was relieved.
I'm going to show you two more photographs. I'll show you State's Exhibit 22. Is this just a more close-up photograph of what State's 21 was?
Yes, ma'am.
Officer Wilkie, do you remember this orange dress?
Yes, ma'am, very, very vividly.
Why is that?
My daughter has the same dress, or had.
Let me direct your attention to State's 23. Will you orient the jury to this photograph, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is the dress that I saw and cherished, and this is the visual that I had. It was just underneath the water at the time that I saw her.
Is this her ear?
Yes, ma'am.
And this is her hair?
Yes, ma'am. But it was like I said earlier, it was floating in the water, so I actually had a clear view of the side of her face, the right side of her face, looking away from me.
You said you stayed there until you were relieved. Were you actually relieved by crime scene unit technicians who came out to work the scene?
Eventually I was. Officer Brian Hall relieved me temporarily. I was pretty emotional at the time, and so I took a break, and he took over and stood by for the last little bit before the evidence technicians took control of the scene.
Thank you. I don't have anything further.
Any cross-examination?
Officer, back to the felony stop.
Yes, sir.
You indicated that Mr. Smith stuck his hands out, and it was so odd that you still remember it.
Yes, sir.
Was that the first time anyone's ever done that?
Ever crossed their arms when they stuck them out? Yes, sir.
And how many stops have you made over the course of your career?
Literally hundreds.
Okay. And what was so strange about it was the way he did this with both hands?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then he did something else strange when you asked him to pick up his shirt?
Yes, sir. When he released the shirt, most people don't throw their hands up in the air, but he did. He raised his hands up above like that, and then he went back to...
Okay. And you described that as like flamboyant?
Well, it seemed a little bit much. It's just something I didn't expect and I'd never seen before. Being in the K-9 unit for 18 years, typically all we do are felony type calls and in-progress things. So we deal with a lot of people that have committed, a lot of crimes. And it was just something I had never not witnessed before on one of mine.
So it was just strange, and you still remember it, and you have no explanation for it?
Correct.
That's all I have.
Yes, sir.
Any redirect? Any redirect?
No, ma'am.
May you be excused?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good to see you again.
Thank you.
State may call their next witness.
State would call Detective Kim Long to the witness stand.
Detective Long.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, I am Kimberly Ann Long
How are you employed?
with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office.
How long have you been employed with the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office?
Almost 25 years.
What is your current assignment?
I am a detective in the crime scene unit.
And how long have you held that position as a detective within the crime scene unit?
About 17 and a half years.
Detective Long, if you could, please briefly describe what your role as a crime scene detective is, particularly when it comes to a death investigation.
Yes, it's our responsibility to investigate the scene, document the scene, whatever means is, whether it's photography, diagramming, and then we examine the area and we look for evidence, and we collect the evidence and preserve the evidence.
In your 17 years as a crime scene detective, approximately how many death investigations have you worked?
I would probably say death investigations, at least 500.
And do you have a specialized training and experience that qualifies you to work what we call major cases within that unit?
Yes, we receive extensive training as far as crime scene investigations, crime scene management, homicide investigations, bloodstain pattern analysis, training, shooting incident reconstruction, and reconstruction type of training.
Detective, I'd like to direct your attention to June, particularly June 22nd of 2013. Were you working on that day?
Yes, I was.
And when did you first respond in regards to the case of the state of Florida versus Donald Smith?
At approximately 9:17 in the morning,
What was the first action that you took?
I responded to the termination point where the van was stopped.
And at that particular location, what work did you do to preserve the van for possible evidentiary purposes?
We collected photographs of the vehicle as we found it, and then we closed all the doors and sealed the doors with crime scene tape, and we actually signed the evidence tape showing that we sealed the doors.
And so was the van then collected from that location and then taken to the JSO warehouse on Haines Street?
Yes, it was.
After you completed your work at the location where the defendant was taken into custody, did you then respond to the location behind Highlands Baptist Church at Rutgers and Broward Road?
Yes, I did.
What did you first do when you arrived at that location?
When I first arrived on that location, I actually made contact with K-9 Wilkie, so he could just kind of give me a brief synopsis of his actions when he was at the scene.
And once you got that brief synopsis of what had happened, did you also speak with homicide detectives to determine how you were going to begin to process this location?
Yes.
And what did you do first to begin your investigation at that crime scene?
First thing that we always do when we respond to a scene is we take photographs of the scene, showing everything as we see it without it being altered in any way.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
And Detective, prior to coming to court, have you had the opportunity to come to my office and review the evidence and photographs of the case?
Yes, I have.
I'm now showing you in its entirety a stack of photographs that will be marked State's Exhibit X through State's Exhibit, I believe the last one is Q, before we get to this photograph, which I'll hold off to the side. Can you just read through those photographs, please? So State's Exhibit X through State's Exhibit Q.
Double Q.
Double Q, yes, Your Honor. I apologize, it's X through double R. It's the final photograph in the stack right here. After reviewing State's Exhibit X through double R, do those photographs fairly and accurately depict the crime scene as you responded on June 22nd of 2013?
Yes, they do.
Also, I'd like to show you what's been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit TT. Do you recognize that map?
Yes, I do.
And does that map, which is an overall map of Jacksonville, depict locations of this particular investigation, where the defendant was stopped, where the body was recovered, where the Walmart is, and even Mr. Smith's home location?
Yes, it does.
Based upon you working as a police officer for the past 25 years, does that map accurately reflect the addresses and locations of the relevant scenes in the investigation?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Your Honor, at this time, we'll move into evidence State's Exhibit X through State's Exhibit RR. The next number of exhibits, which I believe will be State's 24 through 40.
No objection, but we would preserve all prior objections.
Okay, that'll be noted for the record. So X is State's Exhibit 24, Y is 25, Z is 26, double A is 27, double B 28, double C 29, double D 30, double E 31, double F 32, double G 33, double H 34, double I 35, double J 36, double K 37, double L 38, double M 39, double N 40, double O 41, double P 42, double Q 43, and double R 44. I believe that's how far you said.
I believe that's accurate, Your Honor. I'm holding on to double T for the time being.
All right.
Detective Long, now showing you what's been previously marked and moved into evidence as State's Exhibit 25, could you please explain to the jury what's depicted on this diagram?
Yes, what you're looking at is what we call our diagram, our completed diagram of the scene. As you can see in the diagram on the top left corner, and I'm going to mark it, this is what we call our legend. It's just explaining what you're actually looking at. If there are any items of evidence that are marked on this diagram, as you'll see, number 1, 2, 3, and 4, those are what we call items of evidence. And then we'll just describe what those particular type of items are. And you also can see that it shows the basketball court. There's a building. It shows that on the right-hand side of the diagram would be Rutgers Road. And you can see down toward the bottom right, you'll see where I said to the church, and it has an arrow showing that's the direction toward the church. And then when you're actually looking in the lot, you're going to see these lines that I'm marking in red, and these are what we call the tire tracks that I saw in the grass area. And then the dark green and the light green area are the wood line area, what I call the marsh area. And I'm showing where you can see where it says suspect trail that I'm marking. And this is what we saw that we designated as the suspect trail, and then the trail that K-9 Wilkie used to enter into the marsh area. And then it shows where the victim is located into that area.
Based upon the victim's location in the water, what steps were taken to preserve the path and the wood line going towards her body to make sure that no evidence was possibly disturbed?
Once again, we definitely made sure nobody walked around where the tire tracks were at, and we only entered in through the area where K-9 Wilkie entered in. We stayed away from the area that we could tell where there was a depression in the grass in the marsh area where the suspect had been. And we actually even went onto the other side of this creek, and we used GFRD, which is the fire department. We used one of their John boats to take us over to the other side so that we could have just another view so that we're not disturbing that marsh area.
And in fact, did you, along with other investigators, get into the boat on the other side of the water and then approach the victim from the water line so that you could see her location without disturbing the ground area directly in front of it?
Yes.
I'm now showing you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 25 in evidence. If you could describe what is depicted here in this aerial photograph.
Yes, this is actually what we call an aerial photograph. So we actually had a crime scene detective go up into the air on a helicopter, and they were able to get take photographs for us so you can have what we call a bird's eye view. And in this photograph, as I'm marking on the bottom, that would be Broward Road. And then as I'm marking on the right corner, kind of upper corner, that is Rutgers Road. And of course, this is what I deemed the creek area. And you can also see you can kind of see as I'm marking in the middle of the photograph, tire tracks. And then of course, to the right that I'm circling, that is the church. This is a building that was on the lot. And in the middle, near the tire tracks, or kind of not close to it, but near the tire tracks, there's the basketball court. And then where the creek line is, where you see the wood line is, there's like kind of a blue, that was actually a blue tent that we set up over the body.
And so when you made the Mike, can you come here for a second? I apologize, Your Honor. Hit the eraser and I shifted it. I just want to make sure we're not publishing anything
out. We still... Ready to go? And then- Thank you. Appreciate it. In this area here on the other side, is that how the approach was made then to approach the victim's body from the water line?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure if that's the exact area that we entered the water, but I know that there was a house where the owners of the house allowed us into, and I believe they had a dock, and we were able to enter over somewhere in this area. We were able to enter in the water, and then we took the boat to the other side.
Great. Thank you. Now showing what's been marked as State's Exhibit 26, can you describe further the tire tracks that you described in the other photograph? I think they're a little bit more visible in this photograph.
Yes, this is just a little bit closer up of the last photograph that we just saw. In particular, you can now definitely see, and I'm just going to circle both tire tracks. You can see where there are tire tracks in the grass area.
What efforts did you make to make those more visible to the eye, and especially, obviously, from the air unit above?
I actually spray painted myself, and Detective Doherty, who was another crime scene detective that showed out there, we actually sprayed it with like a neon orange spray paint.
And did those tire tracks lead to the suspect trail that you indicated on the diagram that we were previously looking at?
Yes.
And so it appeared that some sort of vehicle entered in this location and then came back out in the same manner and then exited the grassy area.
That is correct.
Now showing you what's been previously marked, State's Exhibit 15 in evidence. Can you please describe what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, this is just another, actually a closer up photograph of those tire tracks, so you can definitely see them better as one set leads toward the area that we deemed being the suspect's entry point into the wood line, and then the other set as it's leaving. And also you can see in relation to it, you can see the tent that we had placed over the body.
Now showing State's Exhibit 27. Describe what's depicted in this photograph.
This is an aerial photograph. It's actually facing to the east, and it's just showing you a better representation of where the body is located in the marsh area. And you can actually see, I'm kind of marking it, the area that the grass was depressed where we deemed to be the suspect's entry point to the body. And it just kind of shows you the relation where this is as far as the lot and the church and Rutgers Road.
Based upon when you originally arrived at this location and then as time passed, was the water level receding during the course of the investigation?
Yes, the water line receded.
Okay. And according to officers who had first arrived at the scene, including K-9 Wilkie, was the victim's body submerged in water when they first arrived?
Yes, and also when I first arrived, it was still submerged in the water.
It still was submerged even when you arrived?
Yes, sir.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 28, could you describe what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, sir. It's another aerial photograph. It's closer, a closer view of the photograph we just saw. Once again, you can see that we highlighted the wood line of the grass that was depressed leading up from the wood line up to the body.
I'm now going to circle just to the south. Well, south is probably the wrong description based upon the direction, but just beneath where the blue tent is in that depression or where the reeds are matted down. Is that where you and other detectives made entry to the body and then also put the tent up from that location?
Yes, sir. This is actually where what you circle, the depression in the grass. That's where the John boat, the boat that the fire rescue, the fire department people, and I believe Detective Alexander, Homicide Detective Alexander, we were on the boat. That's the location and how we entered up to the body. So we're the ones that caused that depression in the grass.
Thank you. Now, moving on to State's Exhibit 29 in evidence. Could you describe what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, we're actually starting from the asphalt, and this, what you're actually looking at, you're looking at tire tracks that I have marked with the orange paint, and these tire tracks are located to the, there was a dumpster between the two sets of tire tracks, and these tire tracks are actually located to the west of the tire tracks, and it's east of the location where the suspect entered the wood line.
State's Exhibit 30 in evidence. Could you describe what's depicted in that photograph?
Yes, sir. These are actually the tire tracks that you just saw in the previous photograph without the orange paint on them.
And so even without the orange paint, when you arrived at the scene, you could distinctly see that a vehicle had gone back to that particular location without any additional aid.
Correct.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 31.
These are the same set of tire tracks that you just saw, but now you're able to see how they start leading back to the wood line. And you can also see in this photograph, and I'm going to circle it, there are some orange flags, and this was just marking another area where we had tire tracks. And I don't know if we had spray painted them yet, but I wanted to make sure we put flags there so nobody would step on it and disturb it.
Now moving on to State's Exhibit 32. Again, does this follow through around the corner and closer up to the wood line itself?
Yes, sir.
And now State's Exhibit 33. Are these the tracks that you talked about that hadn't been painted yet, again, where they're visible just to the naked eye?
Yes, sir. The ones leading up to the wood line, and I had not even placed the orange flags by them yet either.
Now, this area right here, the wood line that's depicted in that photograph, is beyond that wood line the water and where the victim's body was actually recovered.
Yes.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 34. Again, is this a closer viewpoint of how there was an entryway into that wood line?
Yes, it is. And you can also see in this photograph, through the trees, you can see the blue tent, and I'm circling, you can see the blue tent that we had placed over the body.
Did you and other crime scene detectives walk the path that the suspect would have taken when the body was placed into the water to determine whether or not there was any items of evidence in between the grassy area and where the body was?
Yes.
Okay. And was anything of specific note recovered of value that you're aware of?
We did not recover any evidence as far as tangible evidence that we could take with this, but I did note, and I took photographs of showing where different branches had been broken leading through the woodline area.
Okay. And so you could see with the naked eye that there was disturbance within that path leading out towards the victim's body.
Yes.
Branches broken, and you could tell that they were fresh.
They appeared to be fresh.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 35. Could you describe what's depicted in this photograph?
Excuse me. Yes, this is actually in what I call the marsh area, and this is the area where the suspect would have had to walk through the wood line, and he would have came out to this grass area, and this little area that I'm kind of marking would be is the trail, the area that we saw with the depressed grass going through the marsh.
So going back to State's Exhibit 34, this would be on the church side of the property looking into the wood line. Then when you move on to State's 35, this would be on the water side of the wood line looking back towards the church property.
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 17, is this show the disturbance to the branches that you had previously described?
Yes.
Okay, and again, this is leading out towards where the water was and then the victim's body was eventually recovered?
Yes, this is actually leading away from the water toward the church.
And now State's Exhibit 18 in evidence.
This is actually on the marsh side, and you can see the opening to where, and then the trail, so you see the depression in the grass, and at the bottom right of the screen, you can also see a fallen tree.
And is that the fallen tree where Cherish Periwinkle's body was recovered?
Yes.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 36, again, does this show the length of that disturbance or where the path was from the wood line in the marsh?
Yes, it's showing the path.
I apologize. Now showing State's Exhibit 37. Could you please describe what's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, other than the blue tent that you can see that we put over the log, this is a fallen tree, and as you can tell, there's like a lot of grass around the bottom part or underneath where the tree is at. You see a yellow flag where we're just kind of marking certain areas of the, I think there's some asphalt, but inside, right underneath the fallen tree, is the location where the body of Cherish Periwinkle was located.
Were items of debris such as tree branches, asphalt, rocks, were items placed upon her body?
Yes, there was grass placed on top of her, I think at least 2 or 3 pieces of asphalt and I would call it a branch.
So did it appear that there were obvious efforts to try to conceal the body's location?
Yes.
State's Exhibit 38, you describe what's depicted in this photograph.
Yes, sir. This is actually on the other side of the fallen tree. It's from the water side, and you can see that there's a branch laying on top of the right arm of Cherish Periwinkle. And you can also see where some grass had been placed on her body.
When you first arrived at this particular location and looked at it as the water was up, how high up was the water level that is now obviously receded in this photograph?
Like I said, she was submerged, so it would have to be up at least to the bottom part of the tree.
Now showing State's Exhibit 39 in evidence, please describe what's depicted in this photograph.
This is a photograph where some of the asphalt and the grass had been removed from the body so we could expose the body more.
The victim's body, when you remove the asphalt and the grass, did she have on any underwear at that point in time?
No.
So the only thing she was wearing was the dress, but it was pulled up above her waistline or floated above her waistline? Now showing State's Exhibit 40 in evidence, is this what you had previously described on how items of debris such as asphalt and branches were placed upon her body?
Yes, you can actually see some of the asphalt. I'm going to circle the asphalt. In this photograph, you can see 2 distinct pieces of the asphalt and the grass that were laid over the body.
Clearly, I mean, this is asphalt, this is rock. This is not going to float on top of her body. It would have had to have been placed on top of the body when she was placed in the water.
That's correct.
State's Exhibit 19 in evidence, is that a piece of the asphalt that you removed that was trying to conceal the body?
Yes.
And State's Exhibit 20 in evidence?
It's the other piece of asphalt that was on top of the body to conceal it.
Now showing you what's been previously moved into evidence is State's Exhibit 41. Could you describe what's depicted in this photograph to the jury?
Yes, this is what we call just an overhead photograph, and you can kind of see it's out of focus because we weren't really focusing on it, but this is the log, the tree that she was under, and this is just kind of showing the position of her, and you can definitely tell that she's wearing the orange dress, and at this point I believe the branch had been removed away from her right arm.
Now showing State's Exhibit 42 in evidence, can you describe what this depicts?
By now, the medical examiner had already arrived, and the body removal people, the ones that removed the bodies for us, they had arrived, and they are now removing her from underneath that tree.
And this is how she looked when she was pulled out from underneath where she had been placed and covered in debris.
Yes.
Moving on to State's Exhibit 43 in evidence, describe what's depicted in that photograph.
We're just showing her face and just showing that there's some blood evidence around her face and the purpling of her lips. And you can also see there appear to be some ligature marks on her neck and some mud around her face.
Was there anything of specific importance to those ligature marks around her neck that, based upon your training and experience, you were observing?
Well, by looking at the ligature marks, and then also, like I said, the medical examiner was on the scene, and we always look at their eyes too. And within their eyes, she had what we call petechia hemorrhage, which is between the two is a classic, is classically known for asphyxiation or from strangulation.
And is this done while still at the scene to try to determine possible cause of death even before the autopsy is performed?
You mean reviewing the body and taking the photographs? Yes.
Okay. And so with the ligature marks, with the hemorrhaging within the eyes, based upon your training and experience, strangulation was likely a possibility?
Yes.
In particular, in State's Exhibit 43, and I'm going to mark in this area here, while I know it's difficult because of the size, those faint specks, is that in fact ant activity that was on her body in that location?
Yes, that appears to be ant activity.
Okay, and that was from the log and the water, the area where her body was left and disposed of?
Yes.
Now moving on to State's Exhibit 44. Please describe what's depicted in this photograph.
It's just another angle photograph showing her face, her neck, and just part of her body.
And there were apparent injuries again to the neck and the face that you could see just immediately upon removing her from underneath the tree?
Yes.
Before I go on further, let me approach you. Now, based upon the ligature marks and then also the hemorrhaging that you saw within the eyes, after the body was removed, did you take swabs from the victim's neck for possible DNA evidence to be examined by FDOE?
Yes, I did.
Explain to the jury why that was important based upon what you saw when you removed the body from underneath the tree.
Because if we're seeing the ligature marks and if we're seeing the petechia in the eyes and we're believing that it might be strangulation, just by the person touching it, they could leave what we call touch DNA behind. And so that's important to us to swab that area.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Detective Long, I'm now showing you what's been previously marked and identified as State's Exhibit SS for identification. Do you recognize that exhibit?
Yes, I do.
And what do you recognize that exhibit to be?
And this is the touch DNA swab that I collected from Cherished Periwinkle's neck.
And is it in the same or substantially the same condition as it was when you collected it from her body on June 22nd of 2013?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, at this time we will move into evidence State's Exhibit SS as the next numbered exhibit to the State's Exhibit 45.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
That will be entered SS as State's Exhibit 45 in evidence.
Your Honor, may I have the witness step down?
You may.
Detective, if you could step down, have you sort of position yourself right here in front of the table, make sure you have the voice of the court reporter. If you could please describe to the jury what the DNA swab consists of and how you take that swab when you remove the body from underneath the tree.
Yes, as you can tell by looking at the exhibit, you have a piece of paper which is swabs, they're sterile swabs, and what we'll do is put on a pair of clean gloves. And then we'll use distilled water because you don't need contaminants. So you use distilled water. We usually use 1 or 2 drops of distilled water, and you can't see it because it's still in this paper. But the swab really on the end is a cotton swab. It looks like a large Q-tip. You put 1 or 2 drops. We don't want to saturate it. We'll just put a few drops of water, distilled water on there. And then what I'll do is the area that I'm concentrating on, I will just make sure that I swab around that area really well. After I collect the swab, I will take this Q-tip and I will place it back into the original packaging that it's in. And then I will sometimes we have like we call it drying wax, which is a piece of cardboard that we have numbers in it. I will just take the swab and we'll set it in there in this paper, set aside, make sure that it's not, because when it's in this paper, it's not being contaminated with anything else. And then, we'll let it dry for a little while. Don't really have to, but we do. And then we'll put it into a mill envelopes. We fill out the mill envelopes and, put the swab on it and really, collect it upon.
Thank you. You can retake this. Detective Long, obviously the swab that we just showed the jury in States 45, that was a swab that you collected around the neck. Did you also attempt to get swabs from other areas of the body as well?
Yes, I did.
And what other types of swabs did you take, or what other areas did you try to get possible DNA evidence from? I'm
going to use my report just as I can to refresh my memory, but I remember the log, the tree that she was under. I actually took swabs from that, and as far as her body, her wrist, her legs, her ankle, the area of her back and her buttocks area that was exposed, I took swabs from that area. Her right leg, her ankle, her left leg, ankle, the branch that was by her arm. The 2 rocks, or actually there were 3 rocks, the rocks of asphalt, I collected swabs from those, and her right arm, wrist, and hand, and left arm, wrist, and hand.
Obviously, you're hoping at this point in time to possibly get DNA evidence of whom may have done this to her, correct?
That's correct.
Given the nature of the crime scene, given the nature of the area where she was placed in the water, is that a concern with the degradation or destruction of possible DNA evidence because she's in the water?
Excuse me, yes.
And is that why you tried to take the swab as quickly as possible?
Yes.
The medical examiner, however, would do a more complete autopsy and collection of possibly any other type of swabs that might be related to a sex crimes kit, correct?
That's correct.
That wasn't something that you participated in?
No.
Once the body was removed and you fully documented the evidence, did that pretty much conclude your work at that particular location on that day?
No, we actually had a line search to search the vacant lot to see if we could find any other evidence. So I had other officers come out to assist me with that. And after we performed the line search, we only I identified one other piece of item that might be evidence. I marked that, took photographs of it, and we collected it. And then we measured in the area for the diagram.
In particular, was a stroller found at that location? A child's stroller?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you ever find any underwear belonging to Cherish Periwinkle in that location?
No.
Did you ever find any items that were recently purchased, household items or things of that nature?
No.
Did you ever find Cherish's pink or purple flip-flops that she was wearing when she was last seen at the Walmart?
No.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness again?
May.
I previously discussed with you and shown you again, just to refresh your memory, State's Exhibit TT in evidence. That's an overall map of the city of Jacksonville, correct?
That's correct.
And the locations, based upon your investigation in this case and the relevant locations, are they accurately indicated on that map?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I would move this evidence. State's Exhibit TT is the next number of exhibit that State's 46.
Double T will be entered as State's Exhibit 46.
Now showing on the screen, State's 46. The Walmart on Lem Turner Road is located up in this general area right off of 295, correct?
Yes.
Approximately how far was that from where the victim's body was recovered?
I'm going to say maybe within 10 miles, 5 to 10 miles.
Okay, and the victim's body was recovered here in this general location at the intersection of Broward and Rutgers Road?
Yes.
Okay. Later on during the course of the investigation, other items of evidence were recovered at 2339 Broward Road. Is that literally right down the street from Highlands Church?
Yes, it is.
The Dollar General, where the victim and her mother had originally met Donald Smith, is that depicted accurately here on Edgewood Avenue, here in this area?
Yes.
Approximately how far away is that from where the Walmart is?
I can't tell you exactly how far away it is. It could be within 10 to 20 miles, maybe.
But consistent with a 15 to 20 minute car ride?
Yes.
And again, the location where Donald Smith was taken into custody at the intersection of I-95 and I-10, is that accurately depicted on this map?
Yes.
Okay. And then finally, upon arrest, Mr. Smith's address was located where his defendant's home was located down here in the Mandan area in DuPont at Segovia Avenue. Is that accurately depicted on that map?
Yes.
Once you took the measurements, completed your diagrams, and placed all the items into the property room, did that complete your work at this particular scene on that day?
Yes.
Okay. You had already indicated that the van itself was taken back to the police impound lot, correct?
Yes,
At a later time that was searched, however, no evidence was recovered other than minor items in that van, correct?
correct.
Thank you, ma'am. I don't have any further questions at this time.
Any cross-examination?
No questions, Your Honor.
Okay, may this witness be excused? Thank you. We appreciate your time this
Thank you, ma'am.
afternoon. I think you indicated you have 2 short witnesses? No? Those were the last ones for today? Okay, I wasn't sure. Obviously, I was incorrect. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop for the day. I guess the next witnesses are too long to keep going, and you've had a long day. I hope tomorrow we can get started with the regular lunchtime. I think we will. And I would remind you, cannot talk with anybody or get any information about the case or listen to the news or the radio or read the paper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You have to learn everything about the case in here with all of us present. You can leave your notes in your chair. We'll collect them, lock them up, and give them back to you tomorrow. And we look forward to seeing you at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you.